Today on episode 468 of I Am Salt Lake podcast, we get a chat with a friend of ours, Tim Cooley. Always fun to chat with a friend on the podcast. This is a really great conversation that we had with Tim. Tim is the guy that you want to know when it comes to investing, when it comes to startups. I know that you two geeked out.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun for me. This is such a cool conversation if you have an idea or a business that you want to start.
We talk about the books that he wrote, what he does for Park City angel investors, how to pitch your idea to investors so that they'll listen. I know that's important. We talk about so much more in this. You're going to want to pay attention. We're going to get into that here in just a minute, though.
But before we do, I think we should probably introduce ourselves.
Probably.
My name's Chrissy Hollifield.
My name's Chris Hollifield.
And this is the I Am Salt Lake podcast. If you're a longtime listener, thank you so much for joining us again. And if you're new to this show, you might be wondering what it's all about. Well, we're here every week with a brand new episode where we showcase awesome people in Salt Lake City. We get to talk to business owners, authors, tattoo artists, restaurant owners, breweries, distilleries, really anyone that might have a cool story to share.
Hey, and we got a brand new Patreon supporter. I want to give a shout out to Jeremy Hunt because not only is he a new Patreon supporter, Chrissy, but he's a longtime listener of the show.
And he's a friend. I still remember getting drinks with him.
Yeah, he's
Great
a friend
guy.
too.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for being our newest Patreon supporter. And yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Well, here's that awesome conversation that we had with Tim Cooley. It was so fun. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
I want to start with you, Tim, because you and I met through this coffee and bagels, like networking event thing that you hosted this, or do you still host this event? It's at the Mill, right?
Business and Bagels?
Business and
Bagels.
Yeah, Business and Bagels. No, I don't. I left the Mill about a year ago now.
Oh, wow. So you're not even there.
Nope.
So what did you leave the Mill to go do then?
So I joined a consulting firm helping companies raise capital.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. We did meet at Bagels and Business. Awesome organization. Super fun. I think you were one of our first ones, really, when we relaunched it.
Yeah,
it was a really cool thing. Like, I got to come and watch.
Yeah. So yeah, you reached out to me and I did this thing on podcasting, and then you showed me this podcasting room there. And I remember we connected.
I remember there was popcorn.
Yeah. Through the years. And you know, we've met up at these events. You actually kind of did a little, talk at one of the podcast meetups that I did. And you're so connected to like entrepreneurs and investing, like you were saying, and even, you know, we've talked about this Park City angel investing that you're part of, which I want to get into. But with the Mill, and I don't, you know, you're obviously on to new things now, but you're so involved in the entrepreneur space and the startup space. How did you even get into that, man? How did that even start for you? Let's start there, actually, maybe.
Yeah, so I got lucky, I'll be honest. As you know, entrepreneurship's not all roses. And so I graduated, I got my MBA from the University of Utah. That was my second master's degree because I hated my first one.
What was your first one?
I got a master's in sports medicine, and I just really didn't enjoy athletic training. So I went down the business path and I loved it. And so I graduated with the intent of running my own company. We did that, ultimately ended up selling that company, but it just didn't take off the way that I wanted it to. And so when I decided to shut it down, I was like, I'll just go get a job. You know, should be easy. I have two master's degrees. It wasn't. I ended up at Sam's Club, you know, working nights, trying to hit up the networking scene. And I got lucky. I got a job interview at the Mill. It wasn't the Mill at the time. And I took that job, and then I used it really as a great networking tool to get involved more in the entrepreneurship scene in Utah. I was already well connected before, but that gave me the opportunity really to double down on what I was doing and be more focused.
So like what do you love about, I'm curious, there's a couple of different kinds of entrepreneurs. For you, what's the thing about entrepreneurialism that captivates you and keeps you wanting to do it? Because it's a pain in the butt.
Oh, it's totally a pain in the butt. I would say it's two things. I think solving problems is probably the biggest one for me. If someone's willing to pay you to do something for them, I think that's the highest form of flattery you can get. And then the other one is figuring out what problems are worth solving. I think that combination of the two is what makes it super exciting. And I mean, Chris and I, we've talked about this, just the ethical side of business is huge. And I love being part of that.
Tell us about this Park City Angel investing that you're part of, the Park City Angel investors.
Yeah, so let's talk about it as a whole. So if we look at Utah's growing quickly. We've got all kinds of companies that are valuated over $1 billion. Everybody wants to get in that money rush, or kind of the gold rush. But really what's kind of emerged over the last, I would say, 10 years is kind of 3 angel groups. So basically a group of investors, high wealth individuals who really want to give back to Utah by helping grow the ecosystem. And so those 3 are UA2, which is down like in the Provo, southern-ish Utah area. There's Salt Lake Angels, which is based in Salt Lake. And then there's Park City Angels, which I'm a part of, which is based out of Park City. Now, the members kind of can float between them, but that's kind of where they're geographically located.
They're like the established clubs. Club
Yeah.
is the wrong word, but
Yeah.
group.
Yeah. So that's kind of nice. They're a hybrid of a social group, but really with the intent of investing into, like for our group, 80% of our companies have to be Utah. Well, they don't have to be, but they tend to be Utah-based companies.
They have kind of, I don't know if ethical's the right word, but specific guidelines for companies that they want to invest in.
Yeah, so I do all the deal flow screening, for example, and we will take any company in Utah who's looking to raise capital, I will chat with. I don't care what you're doing. And I think that's a unique thing that we do versus other groups, not only here, but maybe, across the country.
Okay. So since we've been binging Shark Tank a lot, all I'm thinking is you're like the fielder for who can go on to the next level, right? Like it seems like you're the person that you have to be the person that's like, nope, that's a bad idea.
Totally.
I mean, I'm sure you never say that. Maybe you do. Who knows?
Not
Some
directly.
people need to hear it.
Have you ever made anybody cry, Tim?
Yeah,
Not that
tell
I
us
know
about
of.
that.
Yeah?
People have made me cry. Not really, but I'm like, oh shoot.
Dude, entrepreneurs are very passionate people.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of this allure to entrepreneurship where it's going to solve all your problems. But like, as you guys know, growing this thing and the other things that you guys do, it's a lot of hard work for a really long time. And you got to be so persistent. I mean, to tell you a story, I had a person come in one time who didn't have a car. They barely could afford where they were living, and they wanted to raise $5 million for something. And I'm like, go get a job, like go start, be safe and steady, and then work on the thing that you're working on. And this person wasn't. And like I said, sometimes it makes you cry, right?
Yeah, that's the one thing that we like to talk to a lot of people like that too. The people who know I live in reality and reality sucks. So I'll have a job and I'll pay the bills, but I'm still passionate and I'm still going to put my energy into this other thing. And people who actually have that kind of vision, I think tend to work a lot harder on their extracurricular stuff. And so it's noticed by customers that they care more.
Yeah, I agree.
At least
I think they're much more focused, right? Like if you only have an hour to do something, you're very efficient.
You are like on it. Right.
Now, you might have to do a lot of learning in that hour, but I mean, you are probably the best employee at your job and they don't even know it,
Oh, yeah.
Because so
easily.
much.
So what do you do? What do you tell people when they come to you and they're like, I have this great business idea. Quick. Let's think of a really bad business. What's a really bad business idea? I don't know. I want to make another sushi restaurant in Salt Lake City, but I don't know how to make sushi. But like, it would be super good, right? I could figure it out.
Totally.
Go.
Yeah. So yeah.
And give me money.
So I think it's like industry, right? So restaurants are difficult, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's say, for example, Chrissy, let's say you want to do this, right? Do you want to make 1,000 million of the exact same roll, right? The same sushi roll 1,000 million times.
It's a good question.
Probably not, but some people do. And I think that's figuring out where that person's passion is. Now let's assume that you do, right? Well, what have you done today, right? Have you sold a sushi roll before? Where would you go? So what I try to do and things that I learned at the mill, was trying to get that early stage person to go out and validate or, test their assumption. Because the reality is a food truck costs, $0. I don't know, they're like $5,000. You could go and do that. We could all start a sushi business tomorrow if we really wanted to, And with the cottage laws in Utah, you could start right now. Like there's nothing that really prevents us from starting a restaurant, for example.
Interesting. But then, so I love that. I love that you're kind of like, well, go to square one.
Right.
That's really good advice. And actually, that reminds me what I was going to ask. It's all about priorities. You had mentioned prioritizing things, and that's kind of the excitement for you with, entrepreneurship. And I don't know about everyone else, but for me, that is probably one of the most difficult things to do. I'm constantly trying to prioritize, and it's like way hard. Granted, I have massive ADHD, so it's just,
I think we all do.
It lasts for like 2 seconds and then it goes out the window. But like, what are some good steps that people can take to learn what to prioritize before they even want to consider starting out on their own?
I think, there's a couple of things. One, figure out what you want to sell, and you can sell anything. People will buy anything, but really figuring out the marketing and the sales part of it. For example, you guys have a great platform. What is it that you sell? Right. A lot of people want to go into podcasting, but it takes a lot of time. Editing's not easy. Like the whole world of podcasting isn't easy. It's fun, but it's not easy. And then what do you do with it? Yeah. I think that those things are like really, really difficult for a lot of people.
That's very true, because it does take a lot of your time, and it's really hard to manufacture authenticity.
Agreed.
With something like that. When your goal is to get someone to buy something, it's very hard to change priorities and shift into something where, say, podcasting, people misunderstand it's a great avenue, but it's a great information avenue to get people interested in who you are and what you do.
Totally.
Well, and I think this is a great segue to go into your book, Find Your Killer Idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like this is. I totally did that on purpose.
Did you do this on purpose, Chris?
Hell no.
So you've written 2 books, right, Tim?
Correct.
Is that the research I did of you've written 2 books. This is your most recent book that you've written, though. Find Your Killer Idea, correct?
So Find Your Killer Idea was the first book I did, based off of what we've just been talking about. This whole idea of bringing products to market.
So we should all buy it.
Yeah, go out and buy it.
Go out. Have you heard any like buddy finding, like from reading this? Have you heard any like cool stories yet, or is it kind of still new out there?
So that one I didn't do a lot of promotion. Sometimes you just do things to do them. And that really was that. I proved to myself that I could write a book, and I did it. So that was really what that one was. But this new one, really, it's called the Pitch Deck book, which is something I'm really passionate about, is helping entrepreneurs present their businesses to raise capital. And they're both good. This one's awesome. I think it's one of the missing pieces that entrepreneurs have. I mean, I've listened to, thousands of pitches. And it's sad when I know a company, if they presented it differently, would have a different outcome. And it's just the way they presented.
I literally keep having movie screens in my head playing Arrested Development when Go Bias Industries. Have you seen that?
Tobias.
People love coffee. People love bagels. Go Bias. Yeah. Go watch Arrested Development, everyone. It's a classic.
I think I've seen the first 3 episodes.
They have a couple episodes where they're trying to pitch business ideas to their brother to get money from investors, and it's hilarious. It's so good.
I'll check it out.
It either goes back to an Arrested Development or it's always sunny.
There's a reference for that.
A connection.
It's always here.
That's awesome.
All right, we're going to take just a moment of your time and tell you about one of our awesome sponsors. UtahMarijuana.org is your #1 spot for all things medical marijuana, medical cannabis, CBD, and THC. Shout out to Tim Pickett. You guys remember him from episode 420 of this podcast when I had him on and we found out how to get your medical card here in Utah. UtahMarijuana.org's team of medical cannabis experts makes getting your medical card super easy, from your first office visit to navigating the state card application and beyond.
With over 20 compassionate and highly skilled qualified medical providers ready to help you find relief, you won't have to search for a doctor willing to recommend cannabis treatment. The patient experience team at UtahMarijuana.org is dedicated to helping you get all the way through the process so you can get your medicine legally. And right now they're offering an exclusive discount to I Am Salt Lake listeners. Use the code GREEN25 for $25 off your first visit.
Take advantage of that. Seriously. GREEN25, $25 off. Chrissy took advantage of it.
I did. It was fantastic.
Mention you're a listener of this podcast. That way they know you're coming from this podcast. That way they know that we're sending you over. And if you're in the West Valley City area, check this out. UtahMarijuana.org. They have a location there as well. 3615 West. 1987 South, Building 8 in West Valley City. So depending on where you're at in the valley, they have a location for you. Isn't it time that you took control of your own health? UtahMarijuana.org. Feel better. So is this book, is it self-published or did you go through a publisher or how did that work for you?
Yeah, just self-published through, the Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay.
I highly recommend people write a book. It's awesome. The process takes forever. But man, it's such an accomplishment when someone else, anytime anybody buys something, like I said in the beginning, like it makes you feel so good about what you've created. And I think, I can't wait. The book only has been out a week. I can't wait for someone to be like, look, I read your book and it changed everything for me. That's going to be huge.
That's awesome.
And it looks like, so you can get it on Amazon right now, correct? Or can you get it from your website too? Or what's the best way for people to get it, Tim?
Yeah, you can go to my website. There's a link to Amazon. It's all Amazon at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it looks great.
It seems like for you, a lot of, you've spent so much time learning kind of like on the job that a couple of books are really good steps for you because you've probably refined a process of, what's the word? I'm having a word problem today. Advice. Yes. You've kind of refined advice that people traditionally come and ask over and over and over.
Totally. And it was fun actually writing the book. And, I'm going to recommend you guys do it. You guys have been doing the podcast thing for such a long time. And it's probably no similar to the classes and seminars that you guys give, in teaching people podcasting or, but you just keep learning and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known. In the book is literally my pitch deck that I went to go and raise capital for. And it's terrible, but it's unfiltered. It's in there. And I wanted to show how bad it was because I didn't know.
Okay. I love this. I'm so excited. So you actually put a real life case study in the book that you are embarrassed about.
I'm not embarrassed. I learned a lot.
I'm definitely paraphrasing, but okay. Right.
See, he's a true entrepreneur. He learned something. He took something and he learned from it. He's not embarrassed about it.
And that's what I want to point out is most people get embarrassed if they do something and it's not perfect, right?
Totally.
I know I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We all do. We're like, oh, man, I picked up the trumpet and I suck at it and I put it back down kind of thing. But the fact that you are so good at what you do and you're actually showing them, look, I did this. It wasn't quite the right way to do it. Like that's a huge thing. That's really valuable for people starting out to see that not everybody starts out successful or doing everything perfect. And it's okay to keep trying. You're better for failing fast.
Yeah. Literally that's the whole just first
staying stubborn. I'm going to go read your books.
Yeah. The first book is fail as fast as possible. And, obviously succeed as fast as possible too, but, set limitations. I had this challenge for myself to launch a company under $500, but it only came from helping, hundreds of other companies do the same thing. Right. Or, lots were in different stages, but I was like, I can do this. I can start something under $500 and not everyone worked, but some did.
Which is really cool. So do you do that just for fun? Like I'm going to start a business from $500 and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Like and then just to kind of see
just for fun. Doing it. It's a Friday night for you.
It reminds me of Dave Jackson. We have a friend who does a podcast, the podcast,
School of Podcasting.
School of Podcasting. I was thinking the podcast coach, but he does that. And that's why he's so good at what he does. He starts podcasts.
Yeah, just to try it out, try new platforms out, try to see, if people are going to listen based off of different word titles and this title and that, But
those are the people that I trust with information. The fact that you do that and you spend your time starting a business with $500 just to see what happens and sounds like multiple times.
Oh, I've probably done it, 20 times.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
See, that's amazing because nobody does that.
Do you learn something new every time, or do you see kind of a similar pattern?
I think for a while I learned a lot of new things. Now I'm seeing a lot more patterns. And then what's cool about them is I know what to do now if I want to make it successful. So I'll give an example, and it's out there. It's on Kickstarter. I launched a deodorant line targeted towards gamers called +5. And so if you want to look at costs, I hired a guy from Ukraine to do the artwork. I spray painted normal deodorant, orange, tattooed the label on there, put up a Shopify store. And then I hired some students for like $200 to create some videos for me. And I launched it, right? I had everything figured out, marketing wise. And it was crazy. It was this really interesting experiment. I had something like 1,000 comments, on this gaming blog. My background's in marketing. I spent 3 years doing that. And so literally I was on like 8 of the top 10 gaming blogs, tons of comments, but what I learned from Kickstarter is you have to have a certain price point to make it work, right? Mm-hmm. In order to hit my dollar amount, I would have had to have the most successful crowdfunding campaign ever. So I didn't know that at the time. And I learned that, right? But what was cool is I found out that every gaming store I called bought it. Every single one. Wow. Right? So I knew there was a market to sell into. I just didn't have the resources yet to launch that type of company. And I did that for like $350, right? Like that's pretty good experiment.
Wow. That's so did you just like do that, kind of get the answers that you wanted and then shut the Kickstarter down? And
yeah, that's exactly what I did.
So cool. I'm geeking out. This is the neatest thing ever. Yeah. I totally want to do this now.
I mean, deodorant though, Tim? This is
that's brilliant. Yeah. Deodorant for gamers? Oh my God.
So this is what happened. So going backwards a little bit. So remember I said I wrote a book because I just felt like I should write a book, right? Well, I went into a board gaming store and I saw this really stupid board game. And I was like, well, maybe I can create board games. That would be fun. So I challenged myself. I did that. There's a group locally called the Board Game Designers Guild of Utah. Joined them, ended up creating my first board game. Had no intentions of ever selling it, but I did it. And so I was in there. They do these things called play tests. It's kind of like the iteration of a business. I think if you've ever tried to make a game, it's actually really, really hard to craft fun. So I learned this iteration thing through board game design, and I was testing someone else's game one time. And, there was like a Magic the Gathering tournament going on, and I was like, it smells on the other side of this wall. And if you've ever been to like Comic-Con or any of these, like where there's people just gathering and just sitting there for hours. So I was like, well, maybe they're not hygienic. That didn't turn out to be the case. But it just smelled bad. So I was like, what if there was a product targeted towards this demographic of people? So that's kind of the genesis of where that product came from. So then I was in this mindset of, can I launch it under $500? I did it. So that's kind of the process.
Okay, but how many people came back at you and they're like, but I want my deodorant?
Actually, quite a few.
Like super excited about it?
A lot of these game board stores did. They're like, hey, man, what's going on with this? Like, where are we at? And I was like, look, it wasn't the right time.
So why? I mean, it sounds like there's a market there, Tim. Should we go into business together?
Let's do it. I still want to bring it out. I just have some other things that I need to finish first. But I definitely want to revisit this. And I don't mind throwing out ideas. If someone beats me to it, that's cool. Beat me.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, what do you think about that? Like people, when they say, oh, competition, like I hear that even a lot in the podcasting space, right? But I don't look at other podcasters as competition. So I'm wondering if you think of other entrepreneurs as competition.
No, see, I think that's a great thing. I don't think anyone's competing, right? You're competing against the market. If the market can't bear 2 podcasts telling the same story, one's going to win. I mean, it's like the Uber and Lyft race right now, right? Sure. At some point, one of those 2 is going away. We just don't know when, right? And then the other one's going to take the market share. And I think that, DoorDash, that they're all competing for one marketplace. But in what we do, it's personality, right? Like I like you guys, right? So I'm going to listen to you guys. But I also like Becky, who's doing her own thing. And so
because she's Becky.
Yeah, she's Becky. She's awesome.
I mean, whoever Becky is, she's pretty cool, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think like entrepreneurs get so focused on, this, you're going to steal my idea, or I can't tell you because someone else might take it. Like, man, if it's that good of an idea, let someone take it, because the odds are is A, they don't care about it as much as you, and B, they don't have the same resources you do. And if they can compete with you and outdo you, that's your fault, right? You should hustle more.
Yeah. And the cool thing about competition is it forces ingenuity.
Totally.
It's like I had a teacher. I went to Rick's College before it was BYU Idaho, and I was in like the first web design class they ever had. That's how old I am. And my teacher, that was the first day. He went off about that. He's like, I don't even care. Open up a store right next to me. Open a store across the street. Like, bring on the competition, because it's going to force me to be better. Like, I have the choice to just give up or work harder. Not work harder, but look at it from a different angle.
Totally. I mean, think about how many hamburger stands there are, right? There's literally one like every block, right? They're all competing for food. And then there's a taco stand between those. And then there's a burrito place. Like, food is the most competitive thing. And yet there's billions of restaurants.
Yeah.
Makes a good point, but people have to keep eating too.
People got to keep eating. So now food isn't about sustenance. It's about entertainment. So you're going to change.
Well, and that's why the deodorant idea is so good, because people got to keep rubbing that on. Yeah. I mean, it's not just a one-time application, right?
And I will tell you, I mean, I work with a lot of gamers and developers, and I myself am susceptible to just, sitting for long periods of time and getting a little bit sweaty while you're working.
Totally.
And like, I would buy it.
I know.
It's just such just the take on it is so different. That's kind of what people are looking for, that we're trying to associate our identity with things that we want.
Totally. And you guys should see it. So the idea behind it too was they're like personal enchantment. So it was like +5 charisma was the.
No way.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my gosh. Okay. I used to play Magic a little bit.
It's me too. I'm not gonna lie, right?
So cool.
You never told me this, Chris.
Well, I couldn't tell you because it was right when we started dating, and I didn't want to scare you away.
The truth always comes out,
Usually over a microphone. But like, it's just it's something that I'm sorry, I'm geeking out still about this idea. Let's move on.
Okay. Did you see so with Park City Angel Investors, you're seeing a lot of startups and a lot of people kind of with business ideas, correct?
Yep.
So this last year, 2020, one thing that I know we've seen with the podcast is a lot of new business ideas. Did you see that? Did you see like an uptick with new business ideas and new startups this 2020?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I screen about 100 companies a month through Park City Angels.
Okay.
And then we filter that down to the group to present 5. And then those get filtered down to about 2 or 3. And what was neat to see through COVID is kind of this mind, especially towards the latter part, where kind of like what we saw in 2008, where people were like, now is the time to do my own thing. Especially later, and especially like the last 6 months, lots of cool ideas, lots of really, really good ideas, and people coming from industries who've been there for such a long time, finally doing something to change the industry that they're in. And that was really rad to see. So
you see like 100, or you'll get 100, for example, and you'll have to narrow that down. Is that really hard? I mean, I'm sure all 100 of those have to be somewhat good. I mean, they can't be that horrible. No. Most of them are good, actually. But like I said, so for us, our focus is Utah. So it makes it easy to screen them. I still read through them because I'm interested in seeing what's going on in the world. But, we focus on Utah. So that's, criteria number 1. And that might lead us down to about 30 or 20 or 30 a month that I actually read through, meet with the people, and then figure out what's going on. And then I'm like, all right, this is a great idea. And then move them forward. Do you have any advice? I mean, I don't know if this is just, since I'm just asking this just kind of off the cuff here, but do you have any advice, somebody that might be interested in approaching somebody like Park City Angel Investors and what might help them stand apart from all the rest? Besides buying your books and reading them. Yeah, totally. Obviously. One of the big things really is clear communication. And one of the reasons I wrote the book in the first place, the pitch deck book, was because I saw so many startups
who could talk about their solution for days, right? Like it's got 5 widgets and it turns blue when the sun is at, 12 o'clock, does weird things. And, but like, it didn't matter because I didn't recognize the problem that they were talking about, right? I don't understand how your solution works, nor do I care because I don't feel the problem that you're trying to address. And so like a big portion of the book really is focusing on this problem solution fit is what they call it. And the way that I like to tell people is the solution is the opposite to the problem, right? So let's say, for example, everybody knows Tom's shoes. And you would say, well, what problem does Tom's shoes address? And they'd be like, oh, well, like people in Africa don't have shoes. That's not the problem they address, right? The problem is you not stepping on a rock and it hurting, right? That's all shoes do. Like the marketing side is the social element. And when people confuse those two things, right? And then that's a big thing that I'd love people to do is really figure out what that problem is that they're solving and then use their solution to solve it or communicate the two. And that doesn't happen always. Actually, it very rarely happens, which is sad.
It's a difficult thing to do.
It's very difficult. It's funny. It's actually really simple, but it's very difficult.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
I say this all the time to Chris. I'm like, you know what? Simple solutions are always the most complicated.
Totally.
Always.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because we try to blow them up into something bigger than they need to be or something?
Totally.
For me, I don't know about anybody, but like I look at it like an ecosystem, right? And you have to zoom in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is our ecosystem of ideas or thoughts, and you have to kind of zoom into a little piece and then zoom out and see where the next piece is. And so it's like a big process to kind of pull the simple parts out of an idea.
Totally. And I think with people, they get so focused on the feature sets of their company, that makes their solution cool, right? But when they really hone in on the problem and who they're solving it for, that's what makes it cool. And all those feature sets, like when you get this like opposite effect, then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe no one's doing this. Right. Like, and then, yes, that
Totally.
problem is so big. Everybody has that problem or who, in that target market. And you're like, okay, I got it. Like, you don't need to talk anymore. Let's go give you some money. I mean, like, truthfully, right? Like it's that when the problem and solution are that connected, it's very difficult not to at least go into the discussions about, it's called due diligence, about funding a company.
Right. What are some, can you give us examples of some ideas that you've been excited about this year to see people come up with?
Oh, so a company, I don't know if it was this year. So there's a company early last year called NERSA. Super interested in what they're doing. So a big thing in nursing is locum tenens, right? Like, so travel nursing, right? But what these people did,
I'm going to believe you.
Right. So what this group did is they created it so a nurse, if they wanted to pick up a shift at a different hospital, they could do that. So they could just sign into their platform, kind of like Airbnb of nursing in a way.
That is so cool.
Right. So you're like, oh yeah, nurses want to make extra cash. Okay, I can see that. So we created a platform to do that. Super clean story, right?
Right.
I'm trying to think of a couple other ones, but that's one that always pops into my head on how clean it is. Here's another one. It's actually in my book too, is it's called Bokeh Science. But the problem is saliva in our mouths. And most people don't realize this. The more drugs we take as we get older, it actually decreases the amount of saliva in our mouth. And the number one cause of tooth decay is saliva loss, especially in older patients. Well,
interesting.
Yeah, so their tool is the only tool to measure saliva flow, right? So again, super simple story. Like, we can't measure saliva flow. It causes teeth to fall out, so we built a tool to do that.
That's so
cool.
Simple.
So it's so cool.
Yeah.
So I think when you can,
the concept is simple.
Yeah. And then anybody can share that story too, because it's such an easy story to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Did we even talk about like what your background is and like where you're from, like where you grew up with all this? Like where are you from, Tim?
Look, I'm just trying to get free advice today. Okay?
like what? Because did you go?
Let's learn about Tim.
Yeah, where did you grow up? Did you go to school? What did you go to school for?
Yeah. So long story, but I was born in Pennsylvania, moved to Texas, lived there till I was 11, moved to Pittsburgh till I was like 14, moved to Oregon. I went to play baseball, didn't work out, joined the Marine Corps, built jet engines. And then I got out and started doing school.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. So I got into this athletic training program at Northern Arizona University. And, I got the chance to be an athletic trainer for the 49ers. And then through, life events, ended up in Utah for a master's degree. And then everything changed my first year in my master's program at the U. And that's when I decided to start my first company. I was like, I'm not enjoying this. I keep fixing things everywhere I go. Might as well fix something that I enjoy. And so that's a
boom.
Now my ears kind of perked up there on the baseball part. Like, did you play like in the major leagues or anything?
No. I tried.
No. Okay. I was like, wow. Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
No, but I had terrible grades. I didn't really care about school. So I was like, I'll just join the community college, play baseball. And didn't work out.
I got you. I was like, oh, wow, I was like, it's so interesting, Tim. We bring people through these podcast episodes and the stuff, right? Like, again, we've chatted a handful of times, but like, again, there's so much stuff I learned about you and learned about what you're even doing. I mean, I remember even one time running into you at one of the local markets, like during the holiday time, and you were selling something then. I mean, that's one thing that I love about you and that I know about you is you get out there and you hustle and you create and you keep going.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And no, it's hard. It's hard for me even sometimes. A lot of times I'll get like, man, it's hard for me to pull my bootstraps up and keep going.
Well, and burnout, especially recently, burnout, I think is much more intense for all of us too.
I agree.
How do you kind of avoid that burnout? I mean, because launching new things, even to test them, is extremely exhausting.
Yeah. I got a lot more efficient at it, So like,
that's fair.
I know how to set up an email drip campaign, right? So before it would take me a month, now it takes me a day. Like to set up a website and design it, I'm not going to go crazy. I need 3 buttons and a picture, so that can take me 2 hours now. Like I don't waste time on trying to like trick people. I'm just going to throw it out there. And if you're going to buy it, you're going to buy it. And I think that was a lot of learning in the past was building something too big. I mean, my first company didn't really work because in 2000, so I kind of built a Peloton back in 2010. Like, you know what that is, like the videos every day.
Those the bikes things that people ride on, right? Like for spin bikes.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So my first company
I know now.
was called Cooley Fitness, and it was daily fitness programs and brand new all the time. It had the old, but it was creating these every day. So think about that. 2010, video cameras weren't really on phones. You couldn't do it that way. You would upload it to a computer. The computer was so slow. It took, for a 30-minute video, the rendering time was like 8 hours. And so like today, it's rendering while you're recording. Like you don't even need to do anything really. So things changed and I just got way more efficient. I also don't do anything that's going to take too much time, right? Like I know if I was going to code some random app, either I have to learn it or I'm going to pay someone. And so I'm going to create a really small app if I'm going to do it. Or, again, I just got a lot more efficient at the ideas that I came up with as well as the execution. Yeah.
And it seems like you're good at iterating, like kind of knowing that maybe you'll want to grow it, but also knowing a good place to start and stop initially.
And that's where I have a question for you, Tim, is you were mentioning how, like these websites you'll create with just a couple buttons, right? Before you maybe put a lot more and try to trick people or this and that. And I know not really trick people. What I do. But don't you think my only thought process with that, like the thought is great, but don't you think that kind of inhibits you from putting both feet in and your whole self in and kind of like half-assing something a little bit, don't you think?
It can, except for I think what my skill set is understanding what it takes, right? So like for example, I think I met you, I was selling a quilting product, right? My mom's a big quilter. And so I wanted to do something with her. And so we created this quilting product. It's a really, really good product. But what I end up doing is from the iteration point is understanding how the market works, right? And the way quilters work is they buy patterns and not products, but they buy the product as long as it relates to the pattern and fabric. So if you're not selling patterns or fabrics, then the tool doesn't really matter. And so I was like, well, do I really want to get into the business of selling fabric and patterns? Today, I don't. I love the quilting industry. It's huge, but I don't have the desire or the bandwidth to jump into that full time, right? Like to make patterns, to figure out how to sell fabric, that whole world, totally separate from this little product that I created. And I think that that's what I get to quickly, right? So the thing I've spent the most time in is helping people raise capital, right? So I spend, that's my day job, right? So I still create products within that same space using the same concepts. But what I love to do is test this market, right? Like, shoot, what if you guys built something that cost you $200 and it worked, right? Like, what if it worked? What if you sold $1,000, right? And it kept working.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if you learn off these, let's say 10 failed attempts, I mean, that's $5,000 of education. Right. And the nice thing is about, especially with what you guys do, you can keep selling to your same audience, whereas mine, I jumped around. I wish I would have stayed in the same industry, but, I didn't. So,
well, you got to find what you love.
Have you ever thought about starting a podcast, Tim, like with all this stuff that you're doing? I mean, it seems like a podcast would be right up your alley.
I would listen.
Yeah, we're in discussion. So this is you heard it here first. But what we might do, and we're really talking about this, is a kind of a podcast / YouTube channel to help critique pitches. So let a person pitch to us, we'll critique it on the fly and then kind of have a conversation about the industry with other angel investors. So that's what we're planning. That's what we're thinking about.
That is a great idea.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're thinking about.
We have a few standard Salt Lake City questions that we ask everybody that comes through here, Tim. So, of course, we got to ask you, buddy. Family and friends come to visit the area. And when I talk about Salt Lake City, I talk about the valley, the mountains. You know what I'm talking about there. They say, hey, show us around, Tim. Take us on a drive. Show us around. I mean, what do you do with people? Do you take them to the mountains? Do you take them to the lake? I mean, what's the Tim Cooley tour?
So, depending on the time of year, I love going to Antelope Island. I think that's just a fun drive. You get to chat. If we're in that fall time frame, I'm doing Guardsman Loop. So beautiful. And then if it's a hike type thing, or Donut Falls, you can't beat that hike, and most people can't breathe. So it's a good one.
It's an easy hike. It's an
easy hike. So most people can make it.
Is there anything that you would change about Salt Lake City? Like, let's say you had that opportunity to change one or two things, and read into that as much as you want, whether it's a big thing or a little thing. Yeah,
totally. I'm going to get I'm going to say political, but I wish we could break this divide of LDS and non-LDS. We coexist so amazingly well that I think that we need to stop talking about it as two different groups of people and just be one.
Amen.
My best friends are LDS, and I don't care that they're religious, and so I think it brings really good perspective when we can all just be Salt Lake. I think that would be huge. I'd also love to break the divide of the point of the mountain. I think that, we don't drive down there. They don't drive up here. And I think it's sad because there's so much happening here, especially on the business side. I wish we could communicate better. And that whole, what's that? Rising tide rises all ships. I think that would be rad.
I love that. Less us versus them mentality in general.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that plays out in what's going on in today. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why we keep holding on to these false groups. They're not groups. We don't need them to be.
It's not helping us like it helped the cave people anymore. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move forward.
Let's all hang out together now.
Yeah, the sad part is it's so easy to move forward, yet people want to hold on for some reason. It doesn't help you. It's so easy to move forward.
Yeah.
It's actually easier to move forward than to hold on.
It was interesting over this last year, right? Like when everything first started happening at the beginning of 2020, everyone was loving their neighbors. And then towards the end of it, it was like people just got angrier and angrier.
We're all trying to kill each other now. It's great.
We just got to start giving hugs again, Tim. That's the problem. We got to get back to the ability of giving hugs.
I agree.
Look, this is actually a very important thing. We need hugs.
We need the biggest hug. I don't know what that even looks like, but I'll take it. I'll give it. I don't even care. I'll go both ways.
Mother Earth is going to grow some arms and just like grab us all, give us a big hug.
What about, I didn't ask you if you have like one or two favorite local eating spots. Do you have one or two favorites?
Yeah. So I was just talking about this the other day. If you need a burger, go to, Lucky 13. I think that place is rad.
Yeah.
Man, there's just so many good places. I love Red Iguana, Tacos Don Ramon, Money. What else?
Oh, I mean, even if it's just those two, those are
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, man? Like I'm sure you got a 5-year plan. You seem like the guy that would have one.
Totally. So
where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I feel like what I'm building towards is being on the investment side of things. I would love to have a fund where we are investing in earlier stage ideas. The problem right now is there's no one investing in crazy in Utah specifically. They want tried and true, which is fine. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. But I would love at least a portion of a fund to go to something that's completely unproven. That's exciting. I used to run a program at the University of Utah called Get Seated. If you're a student listening to this, if you're not part of that program, and you can be from any school, I'm plugging it. Get involved and Get Seated at the U. It's the easiest way to get money to start a business. I think there needs to be a public version of that. And if I could run that, that would be awesome. And basically what it is, it's, $300-$500, whatever you need to test out, or it's called milestone funding. So to hit a milestone to test and see if this idea will work. If I could run that, that'd be cool. That would be a dream.
Oh my gosh, that would be so rad.
That does sound cool.
I want to do that too. Can I just have a lot of money so I can start doing that?
Yeah, it's not that big a deal. Let's just go win that.
Here, try your
$780
idea.
million. Let's get lottery in Utah if we could change something.
Dude, I like that. Invest in small business. I'll tell you how.
And obviously we need to give all the links for people to connect with you, Tim, but was there anything you were hoping we would talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about while we're still recording here? Why we're still
So my thing, I guess one of the big things I want, obviously, check out my book and stuff, but really unplug for people who are starting companies. Like reach out, like let the investment community get to know you. People invest in relationships first. And I think what's happened over the last few years is people have kind of forgotten about that. And I'd love for people to know that Park City Angels and Salt Lake City Angels are here to help. And we want to know what you're doing. We want to be first money in. It's not easy, but like we would love to follow these early stage companies.
What's a good way for someone to reach out if they're nervous, if they just want to start making a connection, like even just a personal relationship strong, but personal connection to get to know you or people in your industry in the space?
Yeah. So if you're from Utah, I'll guarantee this. If you apply at Park City Angels, I will have a conversation with you. So it's that easy. And obviously you may not get to present today, but if you come back in 6 months or a year and you're like, hey, look, we did blah, then there's a much higher chance that you'll get to present to somebody. I promise. I will chat with you.
And how can listeners connect with you, Tim? How can they get your books? How can they find out more about
you?
So
timlcooley.com, just my name. And it's got a link to the newest book on there. So if you're raising capital, go check it out. It really is a great resource. And then the other book, you can Google it. It's Find Your Killer Idea. There's no link on my website because, again, I'm not really promoting that one, but it's out there. It was a test idea.
So cool. I love it, man. You are such an inspiration and such a motivation. And I know you've given me even so many great ideas of what I should be doing with this podcast. So I always feel guilty, like when I'm like, oh shoot, Tim's he's gonna wonder if I'm doing to do it.
I'm waiting for it.
The disappointing children.
Yeah,
you know what it is. Yeah. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I know it's out there. Should be out there.
Oh man,
we'll get to it.
And Chrissy has a final question. She asks everybody that comes through here. Tim, I'm going to let her ask you. Thank you again for doing the podcast with us. And I'd say let's stay in touch, but I already know we probably will. All right. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to thank you too. And I apologize. I really geeked out because this is like the space that I get super excited about. So thanks for letting me just ramble with you guys today. Before we let you go, will you leave a piece of advice or a motto that you live by with our listeners?
Yeah. So thank you guys so much. And so here's my thing. To fail is to believe you can succeed, right? You can't succeed without failing. So that's my thing.
Thanks again to Tim Cooley for joining us on this episode of the podcast. All the links that we mentioned in this conversation can be found with this episode's show notes on our podcast website at iamsaltlake.com/468. That's for episode 468.
Hey, I wanted to mention that Chrissy and I, we were recently on another podcast called Your Creativity. I don't know if we've ever talked about that podcast on this podcast, but we were recently guests on there.
It was really fun.
I actually did have a lot of fun on that podcast.
Yeah.
It's been a while, you know. As podcasters, we go through these spurts. At least I find it where we'll be guests on podcasts. Like we'll go on like 4 or 5 at a time, and then it'll be like 2 years until we go on another podcast.
Yeah.
But it's always fun when we get a visit other podcasts.
It really is.
But yeah, it's Your Creativity, and that's like with the number 8. They kind of did that. That's what Dylan Mazziotti and what's his Stephen up there from Hatch family? Stephen Hatch. Yeah. I guess that would be Stephen Hatch. UtahPodcastNetwork.com. I know you can listen to the episode up there. I'll put the links at iamsaltlake.com with this episode. And I want to mention my podcast class starts up like not this coming week, but the first week in February. So I think you can sign up for it up to the day of the class.
But the last one filled up fast. Like it sold out. So.
And you could do the iamsaltlake.com/podcast class. I think will get you there. Yeah. So make sure to sign up for that class if you want to come learn how to podcast with me.
It really, I can vouch. It is a great class.
All right. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. We would love to connect with you. We love to connect with our listeners. We got an awesome Facebook group. Of course, it's on Facebook. You can find it at iamsaltlake.com/Facebook. I think we're up to like 1,800 members now, Chrissy.
It's a good group.
So much fun. So come on, join the group. Tell us what you love about Salt Lake City. We'll see you there. We're here every week. Make sure you subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to this in.
We're everywhere.
And you have a great week. Get out and enjoy the city. Support local. And we're going to see you next week on the next episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast.
And good night, Grammy.